Greetings, I'm Demonac, and it's Hearthstone time. So I'm back doing the second half of my review of the new Whispers of the Old Gods set. I'm going to try and go through it fast, like always. I'm going to fail. But we have the last three classes, and then all the neutral minions. So we're first in Shaman, and now I've had a little bit of time to play, and this is one of the decks I really like. Evolve! Evolve is a crazy-ass card. It is like a defining card for Shaman. I'm sure you can make perfectly good Shaman decks that don't use it. I don't know why you would, because for a card that doesn't do damage or give you a minion, it's pretty amazing. So you pay 1 mana, transform all of your minions into random minions that cost 1 more. Now, actually, random is so random that if your minions cost 1, there's a reasonable chance they'll turn into something that'll screw you, like a Doomsayer. If they cost 2 or 3, or sometimes even 4. Like there's so many different kinds of minions in that range. They can very easily get worse, or much more commonly just not better. So you have to watch where you use it. But there's a critical mass sort of where around 6 mana, if the minion in play is 6 mana and you are bumping it up by 1, there's a very good chance that it's going to turn into something really strong. And if you go up again, at 8, you start running out of minions that aren't really strong. And in particular, there are tons of crazy legendaries you can get. So, it does amazing things. But basically, if you have out a number of minions, this is already going to do you some good. On average, it usually does you a lot of good. But the other thing to remember is, you got to think about this when you're using them. This card might as well say 1 mana, heal all your minions to full. So, whenever now, I don't know. I mean, there's an advantage to, evolving your minions right away, I guess, in the sense that hopefully they'll be bigger before your opponent gets a turn to try and take them down. But I really prefer to try and get the minions to stay alive long enough that I have a turn to attack with them. Now, when you evolve them, they're going to have summoning sickness, unless they have charge. They're not going to be able to attack right away. So you got to be careful with that. But if you can attack with the minions first, you can do really bad attacks. Anything that doesn't actually kill them. So they can take horrendous amounts of damage on your good minion that you would otherwise want to save, but you can clear so much of the opponent's stuff, probably clear the board, and then evolve it, and boom, it's back to full health, whatever it is. And yeah, it's pretty sick. So, I think we're going to see a lot of evolve. Primal Fusion, not as strong. So it's 1 mana, give a single minion +1/+1 for each totem you currently have in play. There are, Flame Tongue totems and the Totem Golem. Any card that, does stuff based on golems. You're like, Totem Golem, it's awesome! But really, you're not usually going to have more than 2 totems out most of the game. So for most of the game, this is going to be 1 mana, give a minion +1/+1 or +2/+2. And even then, it requires that you have totems that are alive. Kind of a pain in the rear. Yes, you could get +5/+5, theoretically more, but yeah, I could see you trying to play like a super totem heavy deck, but I have a ton of totems in my deck currently, and there's no way I would make room for this. Eternal Sentinel, he's just one of those cool, he's not like a powerhouse, I don't think, but he is cool. It's just being epic makes him like something you're probably not going to craft for. But 3/2 for 3, solid, and he unlocks your overloaded mana crystals. So if you play with a ton of overload, first, as long as you have 2 crystals locked, playing this guy is free. You're going to play him, and then you're going to get refunded that 2 mana you had. Even if you had nothing else to do with your turn, you should be able to make a totem, right? But you can do some crazier things, like if you cast Elemental Destruction. Remember, it costs 3 but has an overload of 5. You cast Elemental Destruction, and then Eternal Sentinel get all that mana back, and you just paid 3 mana for probably a full board wipe. Kills friendlies too, but that is strong. So there's a lot of potential strength in this guy. But mostly he's a 3/2 for 2 at the start of the game. If you cast something overload in the first couple of turns, he will help unscrew you a little bit. But mostly, later in the game, he's a minion that you can probably play basically free. But then later in the game, the 3/2 is not as big a deal. So, Stormcrack, I thought this was really good. 4 damage to a 4 damage, overload 1 for 2 mana. It only damages minions. Like, so this is at 4 damage instead of 3 plus 1, instead of like, yeah, 2 plus 1d4, which is basically what Crackle was. This, I'd rather have the fixed 4 and just know it's going to work, and also not have to worry about other people hitting me with a random 6. But since it doesn't target opponents, it's a really poor replacement for Crackle. Really poor. But I mean, I've still been playing. I had 1 lightning bolt and 2 of these. When I found out this doesn't damage players, I switched it around to 2 lightning bolts and 1 of these. But yeah, it's still working okay. This guy is awesome. What you notice is Shaman is really fat, and now he's fat and fast in the mid game, because you got a 7/7 for 4 mana. Yes, he has an overload of 2, so he's costing you 6 mana. It's a 7/7 for 6. That's still solid, but this is a 7/7 for 6, and you're borrowing 2 of that mana from future you. Screw future you. You want a 7/7 now. I don't see any flaw to this guy. He is just amazing. And Big Game Hunter isn't as big a deal anymore. As much as people used to always be like, oh, get Big Game Hunter. Big Game Hunter costs 5. I don't think you're going to see as much Big Game Hunter anymore. Master of Evolution. He is pretty awesome. He does the evolve thing for 1 minion, only 1. It's not like crazy doubly super evolve, but still, he'll evolve 1 minion into a random one that costs 1 more, which does stack pretty well with the evolves. And, of course, if you have Bran, he'll do 2 evolves for the price of 1. But he's also a 4/5 for 4, so it's hard to go wrong with him. Even if you have, like, some piddly crap 2 mana minion out there, if you can attack your opponent, or if you're really lucky, you can kill something with it if your minion would survive, and then you get a 4/5 for 4, and full heal and replace your minion with something that is probably better. But when you start playing this on bigger guys, again, the 6 casting cost. If you have a guy who costs 6 and you evolve him, he's probably going to turn into a death machine. And if you got an attack in first, that's awesome. So their legendary for Shaman is Halaziel the Ascended, and he's kind of crazy. 4/6 for 5, so his stats are solid, not like excellent, but solid. Whenever your spells deal damage, restore that much health to your hero. He turns your AoEs into massive self-heals that also still AoE. He doesn't stop your spells from dealing damage. You just like, yeah, he lets you play all sort of offense for most of the game, and then if you can do that, just play him Lightning Storm, or play him Elemental Destruction. He's just big enough that if you have no spell power, Elemental Destruction can't kill him, but it can heal you completely to full probably, because, yeah, 4 to 5 damage to every minion in play, including him, you're going to heal that much damage. Yeah. For this reason, I've seen a lot of Shamans playing with Scarabs. Because the Scarab, the 1/1 for 3 guy, or sorry, 1/1 for 2 that discovers a 3-cost card, both Shaman AoEs cost 3. The Lightning Storm and Elemental Destruction both cost 3. So they're both cards that there's a reasonably good chance if you cast both Scarabs over the course of the game, you're going to get an extra AoE, which helps with him. It helps with winning in general. It's just very good. And there's other stuff to do. The other thing I see is using you're doing the same thing. You want the AoEs, but people use like the Elemental Destruction or whatever. It like kills everything on the board, and then they play the Drake, the 6/4 for 6, whose casting cost is reduced by everything that died. He plops out. Now you've got a 6/4, and of course he costs 6. You paid nothing for him. He's an excellent target for evolution the next turn. Then there's a Hammer of Twilight. This is your replacement for whatever the electro mech smashing death hammer. So this is a more expensive weapon. It's a big one. So it's more control-y, obviously. But yeah, 4 damage weapon. It gets 2 hits, so you're doing some pretty decent smashing. And after the second hit, you get a 4/2 elemental. It's not charge, which would be crazy, but you get 2 4 damage swings and a minion that your opponent has to kill, or it can trade with something pretty well. It's a very solid weapon. It tends to work out pretty well. It is a little bit expensive for my taste. I think even if I had a second copy, I'd probably still be playing only 1. And Thing from Below, because remember, Shamans are super fat and fast now. So he's at 5/5 taunt for 6, which is okay. I mean, as a class minion, you might expect a little more, but I'm okay with a 5/5 taunt for 6 instead of like those 3/6 taunts for 6. But he doesn't cost you 6. He costs 1 less for each totem that you've put into play in the game. That includes your hero ability, but it also includes, would you like some fish? You get the free totem from your Tuskar idiot. It includes your Flame Tongue totems, your Totem Golem. So really, this guy is usually going to cost you 4 or 5 mana for a 5/5 taunt. And sometimes ends up being much cheaper. If you draw him really late in the game, probably costs you nothing. So either way, he's just so solid at fighting. It's hard not to play with him. Just like it's hard not to play with him. They smash people. We have the Warlock cards. I have seriously gotten like 5 of this stupid rare. It is okay. Forbidden Ridge, so it's in the middle of the like forbidden cards. It's fine. It's much better than that stupid Druid Whispers thing. Yes, the Druid Whispers of the old, or Wisps of the Old Gods, sorry, can give +2/+2 to all your minions, but it costs a fixed 7. Forbidden Ritual is again a great card for filling in the gap in your power curve. Oh, you don't have anything good to do on your 4 mana turn? You could just like draw a card and nothing? Well, you could just play this and get 4 1/1 tentacles. That's pretty solid. But unlike the Wisps of the Old Gods, you don't have to necessarily go through, you don't have to spend a full 7 mana and then still sometimes not get all 7. You can play whatever it is for your board. Now, when you play it, it'll spend all your mana. But just like all the other ones, just like I said with the Paladin, you can, play a couple things first and then use it for what's left. Now, with the Paladin one, I mentioned that because it makes a lot of sense to do 2 or 4 points of healing to a minion. This, you probably want as many tentacles as you can get out of it. But, if you're hard up, if it's what the situation requires, you could spend 2 mana and get 2 tentacles. It just feels like you could get more from your card. Anyway, it's fine. Possessed Villager, this guy seemed a lot cooler when I thought his 1/1 Shadow Beast was a demon. It's not. It's a 1/1 nothing. So he's a 1/1, and then when he dies, you get a 1/1. There's nothing special about them. Kind of lame. If you're wondering why I haven't dusted him, in his case it doesn't really matter, but it's because I saw a video that opened my eyes to the point that there is no advantage to dusting cards now, unless you're OCD, in which case, sorry. But if you dust a card now, you get whatever amount of dust it is, crap amount of dust. If you dust a card, if you are short that much dust later, you can just dust the card then, and get the dust, and buy what you need, right? But if you have a card, and this guy's a bad example because he is not overpowered, he will never be nerfed. But if you have a card that ends up getting nerfed later on, their policy, so people don't get all salty about it, or people don't get as salty about it, is to let you dust those cards that got nerfed at full cost, like 1-to-1, instead of normally when you dust things, like you only get 5 dust for this guy instead of the 40 it would take to craft him. If he was nerfed, which is never going to happen because he's not that good, it'd be 40 dust. So, saving him doesn't matter, but some of those other things, if you had hung on to every stupid arcane golem you'd gotten over time, you could have been getting like serious dust out of those things and pay for all the other things that you need. So, you start doing that going forward. Anyway, Darkshire Librarian is the solid 3/2 for 2 for this class. 3/2 for 3. Is it Battlecry? Discard a random card. Okay, that's not great. Later in the game, you might be able to empty your hand and play this and not suffer the penalty. Okay. But it's there to try and, again, tempt you into your Warlock, card discard synergy, which is probably not going to work because there are only a couple of cards that benefit from discards, and usually they're not good enough, and the things that take discarding, often not good enough, or the reason that they're good enough is because you play them when you aren't discarding. Or Tiny Knight of Evil and Fist of Jaraxxus are just not really making that worthwhile. But you get 3/2 for 2, you discard a random card, and then when she dies, you get to draw a card, which is interesting. It does help you go through your deck better. So she's not as good as a lot of the other ones, but might see play? I don't know. This is one of the most messed up cards around. So you pay 2 mana, you replace your hero power and Warlock cards, you just change classes. I'm not a Warlock anymore. Today I'm a Mage. Or a Paladin. I don't get to choose what class, though. It is worth noting, this doesn't replace your neutral cards. So you can definitely plan around this. You could make your deck Like, all your Warlock cards could be crazy, rush down, like, right now, like 1 and 2 mana weenies, and, you know, some very cheap spells like that. And then, when you get past the weenie phase of the game, you're sitting there at like 5, 6 mana, and you're like, this is not that great. Renounce it. You've already drawn some cards. Just switch to another class that will hopefully be better in the late game. The cards you get are completely random. They're not based on the casting cost or card types that you had. But all your Warlock cards, all those weenies that you had, that Warlock weenies that you don't need anymore, will get replaced with whatever the new class's stuff is, and you'll still have your neutral minions, so if you plan around it, you could maybe protect yourself from that. Darkshire Councilman, he's a 1/5 for 3, which is hard to kill, and whenever you put a minion into play, he gets +1 attack. Again, it's when you summon a minion, not just when you play them from hand. So your Possessed Villager, you play this guy, then you play the Possessed Villager, now he's got 2 attack. Then your villager dies and spawns another thing. Now this guy's got 3 attack. I think he's pretty interesting. I don't really care that much, but like, the Imp Gang Boss, if he's still in Standard, he'd work well with that. And of course, all these stuff everything is apparently still in the arena. I assumed the arena was going to go like Standard, where they were going to ditch the cards from the older sets. Nope, arena is still everything, except for some Cthulhu minions that aren't very exciting. Spreading Madness. Well, I'll say one thing. This card is exciting. You pay 3 mana, it deals 9 damage randomly split among all characters. So you can literally pay 3 mana and blast yourself in the face for 9. You can also blast your opponent for 9. Statistically, both of these outcomes are incredibly unlikely, but it's interesting. Like, it's so much, as much as I hate all those, like, bombers and stuff like that, and the bombers, at least, the bomber doesn't kill himself, you're at least getting a 3/2 for 2. Or you can play the more expensive bomber. I don't see why you would, but you're still getting whatever the hell he was that was overcosted and suicidal. The Spreading Madness, you don't get anything out of it, but if your opponent has more minions on the board than you do, or if yours are a lot tougher and theirs are a lot more fragile for some reason, I don't know, this could work out okay. It's so much damage that as an oh shit button, it doesn't seem that bad. I don't know how much play it will see in serious decks. I could almost see, I don't know what the row would have to be, but I could kind of see taking this in the arena if I thought it would synergize with things. There's some other things. If you had out the Watcher, I don't remember if that's still in. If you had out the Watcher, though, you'd say playing Wild or in the arena or whatever, it gets +2/+2 for every time you take damage on your own turn. So if your Watcher was already a 6/6, if it had the 6 hit points that needs to have a good chance to survive this, even if it's not, every time the point of damage hits you, it's getting 2 hit points. So the damage would have to go 2-to-1 more at your thing just to break even. So if you have a Watcher out that is able to attack, casting Spreading Madness, there's a good chance your thing just goes Super Saiyan. Say there are a bunch of things out, you take like 3 damage out of the 9, that's +6/+6 on your goddamn Watcher. That is nuts. Other than that, I don't know how much use it is, but that's an interesting combo. I might try that if the Watcher's still in Standard, which it might not be. I don't think it is. But, yeah, no, it's not. It was in the previous set because the Inspire guy was not in the same set. The neutral Inspire guy that was in most ways better, except for that. Here's a way the Watcher's better. So, yeah, the Watcher's not going to be in Standard anymore, so, oh well. The Usher of Souls is a 5/6 for 5, so it's good. And, you know, with your Cthulhu stuff, have fun, because whenever a friendly minion dies, your Cthulhu gets +1/+1. I don't know if this triggers off itself. I would like to know if it triggers off itself, because that would make it better. But in practice, it's not that big a difference. It will help boost your Cthulhu. The other Cthulhu minions are quite good. Cthulhu's good. Cthulhu or whatever. Cho'Gall is their legendary. He's a 7/7 for 7, so solid. His battle cry is the next spell you cast the same turn costs health instead of mana. So you pay 7 mana, you get a 7/7 minion, and you pay some probably not that significant amount of life to cast a spell for free, mana-wise. I mean, this could totally backfire. I've heard that it will not let you kill yourself with this. I don't know. But, I don't know. He seems cool. If I had him, I would play with him. I don't know if I'd craft him for any reason. And of course, Doom. Doom. Yeah, 10 mana, destroy all minions, draw a card for each. Obviously, drawing a card for every minion in play, and then killing them all, is very powerful swing to the game. You do have to bear in mind, if there are a lot of minions in play, and you're already at the 10 mana phase, yes, this will help you draw your Cthulhu or whatever you're looking for. But you might overflow your hand size, a bunch of those cards are going to blow up, and you could be digging your own grave if the game goes into fatigue time, right? Because if you draw like 10 cards, you're going to run into fatigue a lot faster than your opponent. A lot of those cards are going to go to waste if your hand wasn't literally empty. So, anyway, it's still good. It's cool. I don't know how much better it is than Twisting Nether. It's hard to say. I mean, normally you're not going to draw like 10 cards and kill yourself. But, so it's presumably, it's just better. But on the other hand, Twisting Nether costs 8. 10 is another gradation. Like, 10 is very expensive, so I don't know which one you choose. Warriors have some pretty cool stuff. Blood to Ichor, it's kind of like Slam. It's like deal 1 damage to a minion and get something if it survives. Well, 1 mana for 1 damage, not that exciting. But if the target survives, you get a 2/2 Slime. Which is pretty cool, actually. Especially if you have another way to kill them, or if you're triggering an enrage or something. And Zoth's first mate is a 1/1 pirate for 1, but he gives you a 1/3 rusty hook. So he's got to be at least decent in the early game. And if you can get some crazy weapon combos and synergy going on, presumably he should be good. I'm not super excited by him, but he's a lot like Upgrade. He doesn't have the option of Upgrade, but anytime you take a spell that existed and you get a minion who costs the same as the spell-ish, and also gives you the spell, it's almost always a good deal. So, Blood Warriors. This is like Echo of Medivh, but it costs 1 less, and it's a pain in the ass to use. On the other hand, it synergizes with the warrior stuff. It's not too hard for a warrior to do 1 damage to all minions. So it comes back to the same thing as Echo of Medivh, which is just, you've got to have multiple minions in play, 2 or preferably 3 minions in play who are alive, and then cast this. Which is easier because it's only 3 mana, but it's harder because they have to be damaged, so you can't just plop them down and then do it right away. Yeah, it's kind of a pain, but still, it's a pretty good way to get cards. You should be able to get 1 or 2 good minions of your choice cloned into your hand. So, it's solid. Bloodseal Cultist is a 3/4 for 3. She's a pirate. You can't go wrong, really. And then if you control another pirate before you play her, she gives your current weapon +1/+1. So, for example, if you went first mate and then cultist, your weapon would be a 2/4. At which point, that's quite an effective weapon. So, it really doesn't take much when you have all those uses. And yeah, she's pretty interesting that way. I don't know how exciting she is, but pretty cool. Ravaging Ghoul, well, this should help you with your, Blood Warriors. 3/3 for 3 is solid, and it's just Battle Cry. Deal 1 damage to all other minions. Hey, it's like a built-in spell that we know. So yeah, he's very good. Just being able to play a minion and immediately just deal 1 damage to all minions. It's like an Arcane Explosion. Now, Arcane Explosion only hits enemies, this hits your guys, but whatever. It's good, and of course, the warrior synergy is pretty strong, like it is with this guy. This guy is awesome. I just really, really like him. He's a 2/6 taunt for 4, which is already not too shabby, right? Senjin Shieldmaster is a 3/5 for 4. This guy is same-ish. Normally, you'd rather have the 3/5 because it's going to be better at killing stuff, but Bloodhoof Brave totally kicks its ass because once he's taken any point of damage, he gets +3 attack. That's a lot of stats for your 4-mana taunt guy. Tentacles for Arms is a weird card. It is not much of a replacement for, how can I lose the name? Death's Bite. Your warrior weapon that kills everything. Yeah. This costs more, and it's only a 2-attack weapon. What it is it's an unlimited 2-attack weapon. Death Rattle return this to your hand. Death Rattle on a weapon, you can't silence a weapon. So, this is invincible. Somebody slimes it, you just recast it. On the other hand, every time you recast it, it costs you 5 mana. So, it's efficient, and yet super expensive. Yeah, I don't know. I think you can find better ways to use weapon synergy. I haven't heard a lot of people that are excited about this card. If it cost 4, I think it would be a very, very solid card to just have a 2-attack weapon for the entire game at a not insignificant mana cost. 5 is getting to that point where, yeah, you're a control warrior, obviously, you're just trying to slow the game down until you win. That's really expensive, not necessarily doing it. Ancient Shieldbearer, another of the, if your Cthulhu has 10 attack minions. This one's a 6/6 for 7, so it's not as stat efficient as the Priest one, which is a 6/5 for 5. But instead of 10 health, you get 10 armor, which, let's face it, you can always use 10 armor. There's no, like, catches, no weird stuff going on. That is a lot of armor. So, even though her stats aren't as good mostly she's just more expensive, is the problem. But, yeah, still pretty solid. And their legend is, I don't know, he's not very exciting, but I think he's pretty good. He's another one of those ones where if I had him, I'd put him in the deck. Is he that great? I don't know. But 6/5 for 7 is okay. 6/5 for 7 with a free weapon equipped is pretty good. It is a random weapon. You could get the hook, but you could also get really good weapons for that. So then enter the neutral minions. We've got a lot of stuff. First off, legendary Shifter Xeris, who he's pretty interesting, right? He's just a 1/1 for 1. Obviously, that's not really what he is. But every turn that he's in your hand, he transforms into a random minion. I'm told that he has a special glow that lets you know this card is Shifter Xeris, that if you don't play it that turn, next turn it'll change into something else. So people compare this to a lot of things. It's like, why would I just play with like a random minion when I could play with like an actual minion that I chose that is going to be good for my deck? And the answer is that you're comparing it to the wrong thing. This isn't like a normal minion. You need to compare it to Forbidden Shaping and to the Forbidden Ancient, right? Because he's there to sort of even out your curve. Now, those ones are very consistent in what they do. You know exactly how much it will do any turn if you want to spend all your mana on it, and you can just spend them to sort of like fill in the corners. If you just really need to spend that 2 mana on a minion, you can. But you can play it turn 2, you can play it turn 5, you can play it turn 10, and it'll come out okay for the cost either way. With the Priest one being random, but they're real minions, so they might actually be super efficient for the cost, or kind of bad. Shifter Xeris is this weird hybrid of that sort of thing, where he's going to turn into random things over the course of the game. Early in the game, most of them are going to be too expensive for you to play, or they probably all through the game, a lot of the things he turns into are just going to be bad. Like, why would I play that? That's a piece of junk. Don't play it. It'll turn into something else. I think, and again, I haven't used him, but I think that over the course of a game, especially if you have him earlier on, he is likely to be something that you need, or that is at least useful to you at some point in the game. Is it good enough to be worth it? I don't know. But he opens up a lot of possibilities. I mean, if you have 2 other 3-cost minions early in the game, this isn't another 3-cost minion. You can just let him keep changing, and hopefully he'll be something more useful to you later on. Later in the game, you get this guy, and he turns into like a 2-cost minion. You're like, screw that. I'll wait a turn. He might come back as a 7-cost minion, or a 10-cost minion, or any crazy thing. And of course, he can turn into off-class minions as well, so I don't know. Again, I don't know if you'd craft him, but I feel like I would like to try him out. I think that he's going to frustrate you a lot of the time, because a lot of times he's going to turn into something that's awesome, and if you can't cast it right now, so it's not going to be that next turn. But I think that on balance, over the course of a decent length game, he will turn into something good that you'll want to cast. And just to be clear, like, his casting cost changes too. He's not like a 1-cost, whatever it is. He's going to cost whatever that minion costs. He is in every way that minion, except that while he's in your hand, he has this glow that says he's Shifter Xeris. He will keep changing. I don't know if he would get that back if you bounce him. Probably not. Tentacle of N'Zoth, straightforward. It's a 1/1 death rattle, deal 1 damage to all minions. It's a half-price, full-sized, half-explosion, exploding sheep. Okay. Exploding Sheep seemed a little expensive, but on the other hand, Exploding Sheep was really good if you were Mage, because it's worth paying 4 mana to deal 2 damage to everything. and have just to have that option sitting around. Whereas this is a little bit smaller. I'm not sure it's too exciting for that. It's probably good for warrior stuff because often they get an advantage out of that. But seems pretty meh to me. Zealous Initiate. He's your 1/1 for 1. Death Rattle, give a friendly minion +1/+1. He's okay. I can't see fitting him in when like the like Sergeant, like +2/+0 until end of turn, 2/1 for 1 guy exists. There's so many other 1/1 1-mana things you can get. I don't think he's that exciting unless you have some serious Death Rattle combos. And even then, is this really the Death Rattle that you need to combo? Do you want to cast like a spoiler, a legendary minion that costs 10, and so you can get back a copy of him? Bilefin Tidehunter, I love this guy. Okay, he's just like the old Murloc Tidehunter, whatever guy, the 2/1 for 1, and when he comes into play, he gives you a 1/1 Murloc, right? This guy is less good for a Murloc deck in many ways, because he's a Murloc, but he spawns an Ooze, so he's got no useful creature type. But the 1/1 he spawns has Taunt, which in most situations makes him so much better, because nor always, if the other person has anything, like with 1 attack, or like, they can always just kill the 2/1 first. So you paid your 2 mana, you got your 2 guys, but you always end up stuck with just the 1/1. His 1/1. So in a situation where they have 1 minion, they have to kill your crappy 1/1 first, which lets your 2/1 actually do what you want it to, like finish off his guy, or him for 2, or whatever. But also later in the game, when getting 2 minions for 2 mana was always not the worst, but obviously late in the game it's often not going to be anywhere near enough to turn the tide. This guy can just barely turn the tide sometimes because his stupid 1/1 will eat something. It'll eat an attack or it'll eat a hero ability. It will eat something to get rid of it. Whereas your regular 1/1 for 1 Murloc that you get from the other Tidefin will often do actually nothing. So he's pretty good, and of course it's still a great weenie, just 3/2 worth of stats for 2 mana. But in his case, the split up is really favorable. Duskboard, not so favorable. I mean, it's better than Magma Rager. I'd rather pay 2 mana for a 4/1 than 3 mana for a 5/1. And he's a beast, so warriors or druids could synergize him somewhat. But, I don't know. Not terribly excited by him. I'd rather get something more all-around good. It's just they make basic cards for people to have options in case you really needed something in that size. Nat the Darkfisher. He's a 2/4 for 2, which is a pretty efficient casting cost for a guy who has no combat drawback. His drawback is, at the start of your opponent's turn, they have a 50% chance to draw an extra card. So he's a Nat Peggle for your opponent, except that he's a 2/4 fighting on your side. I don't think you would ordinarily play him. Like, he's not super exciting. If you were playing a deck where you're trying to mill your opponent, where you're trying to run them out of cards and kill them with fatigue, suddenly his drawback is half an advantage, while still being more of a drawback a lot of the time. But, later in the game, he'd still be terrible, because you probably do not want to be giving your opponent cards that way. But, I don't know, if they're getting near the end, he's still there. And early in the game, a 2/4 for 2 is still going to fight really well. But I don't think he's that exciting. Twilight Geomancer. You ever want to give your Cthulhu taunt? It does make Cthulhu even more of a comeback machine. Because Cthulhu wants to come out and just kill your opponent by being like 15/15, doing 15 damage randomly. But if it doesn't kill your opponent, and it doesn't kill all their minions, or just your opponent has spells and stuff, well, if your opponent has spells, you're still screwed. This wouldn't actually help. But if your opponent still has minions, or if they have charge minions or whatever that they want to finish you off, if Cthulhu misses some of their stuff because their army was so big or just so tanky, and if they have a tanky army, it can eat a lot of Cthulhu. I'm saying 15/15 Cthulhu, you can get bigger, but you can also end up with smaller if you don't go full on with all the Cthulhu minions. Which, like, I've been going kind of half-assed in my priest deck, and it was working out well for me, at least about rank 15 and worse. But 15 damage gets split up a lot if your opponent had, a 3/6 and a 5/5 and a couple of smaller things. That 15 damage can get really blunted where it might not do the 10 damage you need to kill your opponent, and it might not kill enough of their army to stop them from hitting you back for 10 and killing you at that point in the game. So the fact that your Cthulhu has taunt in a number of situations could save your bacon. How often is that relatively? I don't know. And this guy's not making Cthulhu any bigger. He or she, whatever. 1/4 taunt for 2? That's like, it's not terrible. Like, I could see playing this in Warrior with the +2/+2 to all taunt guys card. If we were doing a control-y Warrior, which I think there's going to be a lot of, and if one of your win conditions was Cthulhu, that could work out okay. But, yeah, I don't know. 1/4 for 2 is sort of borderline where, I mean, it's not enough damage to kill things, but it's not 0 damage, and that's a big difference. People lose bubbles. 1/1s are going to, like, 1/1s and 2/1s are going to get shredded trying to get through him. And at 4 hit points, it takes a little bit. Anyway, Twisted Worgen, it's just like the 1/1, the 2/1 for 1, but he's a 3/2, a 3/1 for 2. With stealth, those are not bad stats. They work. But, I don't know. Amgam Rager, this is just another, like, alright, we'll just throw this neutral out there in case there's some reason that people want him. If you're playing something that benefits minions with 1 attack, or, like, Hobgoblin crazy. He's not even in anymore, I don't think. I don't know. Not really very good. I'd rather have the 1/4 taunt for 2, even if I wasn't playing Cthulhu. Now, this guy, you play even if you're not, certainly you could play it if you're not playing Cthulhu. I hate the shitty, like, Rifleman who is a 2/2 for 3 that deals 1 damage to a target. 1 damage is not that much. 2/2 are crappy stats. Well, 2/1 is basically the same stats. I mean, there's not that much difference between a 2/1 and a 2/2 at this cost. But there's a big difference between 1 and 2 damage that you're aiming. And just have it 3 mana, deal 2 damage, and you also get a 2/1 minion. When you put it that way, he seems like a pretty damn good card for a lot of classes. And also, if you're playing Cthulhu, he's another 2 points on your Cthulhu, which is excellent. So he's very good. Silithid Swarmer, I don't know if this is a good minion for a rogue or a warrior or what, or not. I'd have to think about it more than I have. Because he's a 3/5 for 3. That's very tough. But he can only attack if your hero attacks this turn. That definitely limits his usefulness in some places. I mean, he's still good for, just like the statues and stuff. He's better than those statues, like, in many ways. Because he's a 3/5 for 3 instead of a 4/5 for 2. But he can attack, like, if you're a rogue or a warrior. It's not too hard to get him able to attack, and he is big and chunky. I don't know if that's exciting or not, but, He's an interesting card. We'll see if anyone plays him. Nobody's going to play this guy. This guy's just bad. He's a 2/2 for 3, which, again, not very good stats. When he dies, he gives all your minions +1/+1. If your opponent kills them in the wrong order, which they always will, they'll kill the other ones first and then kill him. You're going to get nothing out of it. How many minions do you have to have out to make this actually good? Like, you better be getting at least 2+1/+1s to make it worth his 3 mana ass. And that's asking a lot early in the game, and later in the game you could do something better. So, yeah, no. Squirming Tentacle is a 2/4 taunt for 3. Surprisingly, like, it's interesting comparing that to the 1/4 taunt for 2. A 2/4 is so much better as a taunt minion, because it will just do way more damage to things early in the game. Then again, at 3 mana is not as early in the game. I don't know how great he is, but maybe the Warrior taunt deck will decide that's the casting cost it needs. I doubt it. I think Warriors have a ton of good 3-cost cards. Twilight Elder, he's one of your key Cthulhu guys. 3/4 for 3 being awesome. At the end of every turn that he's alive, he'll give your Cthulhu +1/+1. So your opponent has an incentive to kill him, but it's a pain because he's efficient and tough for his casting cost. And you're guaranteed at least 1 +1/+1. Because your opponent's not going to kill him on your turn unless you really want him to. So yeah, 3/4 for 3, 1/+1 Cthulhu, and then your opponent is pressured to kill him. I had a Druid, like, inner fire him as his, like, turn 1 play. And I'm like, ugh, I did not have a good way to kill a 3/4 anytime soon. So he racked up, like, 3/4 points on Cthulhu and was also just out there killing my shit. It was a problem. A Bear Berserker, he's okay. He's nowhere near as cool as that Warrior guy, but I mean, class cards are like class cards. They get an extra point worth of stats. But 3/5 for 4, and Enrage +2, he does damage. He's a perfectly fine arena pick. Black Water Pirate is a 2/5 for 4, not good stats. It is a pirate, I guess you get pirate synergy. It makes your weapons cost 2 less. I guess weapon synergy. If this worked on the rogue hero power, it would be amazing. I'm like 99% sure it does not, because that's not playing a weapon, that's playing your hero power. So, mostly pass. I mean, I guess if you have the Blackwater Pirate, then your stupid warrior tentacles of infinite tentacles. Now it only costs 3, so it's awesome. How long is that going to last? I don't know. Thun's Chosen! You're going to notice there are a lot of neutral Thun minions. 4/2 Bubble for 4. That's pretty... I don't like 4/2 for 4 normally, but with the Bubble, it's likely to stick around and get to kill something. And even after it kills something, it's got that second hit point, so you can't just one damage it away twice. Whatever. Cyclopean Horror, I got a gold one of this guy. It doesn't show up when you're on normal crafting. He's a 3/3 taunt for 4, but he gets +1 health for each enemy minion in play. So, really, he's going to be bigger than 3/3, but Senjin is a 3/5 for 4 all the time, doesn't require your opponent to have a bunch of minions out there. If you're controlling the board well, then he's going to be same size or smaller. If you're losing control of the board, then yay, he might come out and be a 3/6 or a 3/7 for 4, which is great, but your board is out of control. I think you're focusing on the wrong things. So he's just kind of like a mediocre guy that doesn't have much purpose. Eater of Secrets, I don't know, he hates secrets. He's less cheesy than the Secret Thief. I will give you that. If you hate secrets, but you think that the 4/3 that steals the secret is too powerful, he's your man. If your opponent has one secret, then you got a 3/5 for 4, which is meh. But you killed their secret, which is pretty rough. So, yeah. And I am told that he does trigger first, just like the Secret Thief. He should go off and blow up the secret before it has a chance to duplicate him. Evolved Kobold is pretty cool, as much as he is an incredibly basic card. He costs twice as much as the Candle one. He's still just a 2/2, but +2 spell damage. That's a lot of spell damage. Not many cards have more than 1 spell damage. You could be sitting there with a Cone of Cold in your hand, and now for 8 mana you play him, and then you Cone of Kobold, and it's 3 damage, and then whatever one thing survives is frozen. Your Arcane Blast now does 3 damage. And again, he's just like I'm thinking you save him in your hand, and then you play him as a spell augmenter that happens to come with a 2/2 minion. That's what I'd like to think anyway. Although, if he stayed out for a while, he turns small spells into big spells. He's pretty scary that way. So, he's interesting. I'm glad they made him. I don't know if I'd be playing with him particularly, but I can see it. You could make a spell power. He's definitely an interesting potential for a spell power sort of deck. Faceless Shambler is a weird variation on the whatever 5 mana actual clone guy, because he does not copy abilities at all. He costs 4 mana, and he has taunt, and he copies a friendly minion's stats. Now, he's not overly strong. I don't think. Late in the game, you could be copying a very big minion, so yay. But it only copies a friendly minion. That's the part that really kills this. If this guy would just copy your opponent's minion and have taunt, and he costs 4, that's pretty solid. You have to have your friendly minion alive and not cripplingly damaged. That is a good size to then play this guy who costs 4, so he probably doesn't cost that much less than whatever you're copying. I mean, you could be copying something really big with him, but then he's like a turn 8, turn 9 4-cost guy. He's like, eh. So, yeah, I don't know. There'll probably be some like solo adventure stuff that he's good for. Infested Tauren is not a goblin shredder, a piloted shredder. boy is he not. 2/3 for 4 taunt. That's a pretty slow taunt. And then when he dies, you get a 2/2 slime, which does not have taunt. It is 4/5 worth of stats for 4, and half of it has taunt. It's the same situation as always with the death rattle. Like, if it was a battle cry that summoned the 2/2, that would be a lot of stats up front, which tends to be stronger. On the death rattle side, it has some board wipe resistance. So when elemental destructions the board, you still have something, but he doesn't seem all that good. Midnight Drake is the opposite of Twilight Drake, apparently. 1/4 for 4, but he gets +1 attack for each other card in your hand. I don't know. I mean, if you need more dragons, and he's a nice mid-range, like, castable, not super expensive dragon, then fine. I think Twilight Drake's probably stronger, and I wasn't even a huge fan of him. Although, at least this guy will always have 4 hit points. If you only have 2 cards in your hand, he comes out as a 3/4 instead of a 4/3. I don't know. Not that exciting. Polluted Hoarder is kind of cool. I mean, if you wanted the card draw like a Loot Hoarder, but you wanted the minion to be able to kill something or deal some damage later in the game. He's just a later game Loot Hoarder. He's maybe twice the size, but he's twice the cost, and he's only 1 time the card. So he has much more ability to trade with something. I don't know if he's actually that good, but I'm sure he'll see play. Just depends what you want for your card drawing. This guy's cool. He's a 1/1 for 4, which would normally be pretty bad, but when he dies, you get a 5/5. So that's 6/6 worth of stats, and the way it is split is pretty good. You have like a 1/1 here, he's like, eh. He may or may not ever do anything, other than on his first turn he commits suicide at the first enemy that comes along. But, if your opponent kills him, then you get a 5/5 charge, unless they also kill it. He's there as a little bit of like AoE protection. If you play him against a clear board, your opponent's not going to want to like blow up all your minions. If it's going to give you a 5/5, or well, they probably still want to blow up all your minions, but then you get a 5/5. So no, I think he works out pretty well. And because yes, the 6/6 worth of stats are split up, but they're heavily concentrated. That one is a really big one that can do work and be hard to kill. So it should work out. He could get silenced. He'd be a pretty good target to silence, but they can't silence everything. There are always a lot of good targets to silence. Corrupted Healbot. Here's one if you want to silence your own. 6/6 for 5. And he has Death Rattle, restore 8 health to the enemy hero. So yeah, in terms of just beating down your opponent, you've got to hit him twice to come out ahead, and you're not really coming out ahead compared to another 5-cost minion. But if you just want a big thing out there to help you control the board, he's your man. Especially if your deck is so slow that you are not concerned with damaging your opponent for the first half of the game. This thing comes out and is big. It's pretty cool. Crazed Worshipper, another Cthulhu guy, but he's a 3/6 taunt for 5. So he's just like Fen Creeper, whatever. Except every time he takes damage, he feeds it to Cthulhu for +1/+1. So he is probably worth at least 2 points, but it could be more than that. Cult Apothecary is the actual replacement for the Healbot. This guy is not. But, I don't know. He costs the same as the Healbot. He's a 4/4 instead of a 3/3, which is much better bad stats, but they're still bad stats. He does not do anywhere near the healing. So, unlike the Healbot, he is not your play this late in the game to, like, keep you in the game while you're, to recover so that you can get your master plan. He might. If your opponent has 4 minions, he will give you the 8 health. But you really need to not let your opponent have 4 minions. A lot of the time you're going to play him, you're going to gain 2 or 4 health. It is restoring it only to your hero, so you can't aim it at a minion. He's pretty meh. Like, I don't pay 5 mana for a 4/4 that does 3 damage to my opponent. Healing 4 health to me is not that exciting either. Maybe he'll work out better. Maybe there are a lot of times that you're going to get 6 or 8 health out of him, but he just doesn't seem that exciting. This guy is weird. He's a 3/6 for 5, but he actually just trades his stats to a friendly minion. I think he's too expensive for what he does. He's just, I don't know. You try and think of what kind of minion with a crazy ability would you like to give these stats to. These aren't that huge stats. Like, yes, these are good stats to give to a pit snake or something. Now, it can be like a ghetto version of what's it makes now, the like 2/8 spider for 6. Well, she's only a 1 mana more than him, and she's a 2/8, and she just does the job. There's probably a combo somewhere. He's the kind of thing they can print, and then maybe later someone will find a cool combo. But I don't know. So how many like really small minions would it be worth trading this to? It also could take a minion that is not really small, that has just taken a beating, and effectively heal that minion up to 6 hit points, even if it didn't have 6 hit points. But if the minion's job was to be huge, this guy, you're not giving it a huge attack. So I don't know. Psychodron is a lot more expensive than Nanoedron. 3/4 for 5 with Divine Shield, though. You have to remember, like, he is a lot better than Sen'jin Shieldmaster. He's a mech, if that matters, and he's traded 1 hit point for a Divine Shield. If you ever play Sen'jin Shieldmaster, this guy is just better, like 98% of the time, or the same or better 98% of the time. Validated Doomsayer, so he's a 0/7 for 5 mana, and then if he survives to the beginning of your turn, you set his attack to 7. He will also regain his attack if for some reason his attack was reduced. If his attack was for some reason increased, he will reduce it back down to 7. His attack will always be 7 once he's at the start of the turn. I don't know, 7/7 for 5 sounds good, but your opponent has all this time to beat on him for free. He's not a 1/7 or a 2/7 who could deal any damage back. They can easily just sort of dispense with him if they have any minions out. If they have no minions out, then, well, you were already winning, so I don't think he does that much. Ancient Harbinger is weird. 4/6 for 6 at the start of your turn, so every turn at the start of your turn until you run out of them, it will take a 10 cost minion from your deck and put it in your hand. It does help you get your Cthulhu faster, but it doesn't make your Cthulhu bigger. I mean, there are other things you could be getting too, but like it's not really a turn 6 play. It's like a turn 9 play. You play this turn 9, and then if it lives, they can still kill it to prevent this from happening. It's not even like at the end of your turn. So I don't know. It is card draw. It's drawing you powerful cards that you, I'm sure, want to get in your hand, but I don't know if it's going to see that much play. Come on. Turn the page. It's not that hard. Did we miss one? No. Okay. Corrupted Seer is interesting because, I mean, the cost is high. Like, you're paying 6 mana for a 2/3. No, you're not. You're paying 6 mana to do 2 damage to all minions. It ignores Murlocs, so if you're playing Murlocs, it won't hurt them. Obviously, it doesn't hurt itself. If you're, I don't know, it's weird because it is just a 6 mana deal 2 damage to almost all minions spell that any class can use. It's interesting from that perspective. And you get a 2/3 out of the deal, but I don't know how great it is. If you're playing Murlocs, is this too slow for you? Still seems pretty decent, but for Murlocs. Wukla, Tyrant of the Veil. He's a 5/5 for 6. He gives you 2 bananas. I don't yet know if these can be weird mutant bananas, because that would sure fit in with the set. You know those random weird bananas you get from the random banana, like Tavern Brawls? If these are just regular +1/+1 bananas, then it's like a 7/7 for 6, but it's not, because it's a 7/7 for 8, because you still have to cast those bananas. At which point, not super exciting. I could see putting him in a deck if you had a deck that that liked beasts and you had him, but I sure as hell wouldn't craft him. Nerubian Prophet, this guy is weird, but I actually think he's cool. So, 4/4 for 6, obviously terrible stats, but of course, his ability is to not cost 6. So when you draw him, he costs 6, but every turn, his cost goes down by 1. If he's in your starting hand, then you can play him on turn 3. 4/4 for 3, that's kind of cool. He's not going to run away with the game at that point. But he is going to keep getting cheaper every time you don't play him. So often I end up playing him for like 2 or 1 mana later on. Of course, I'm playing him in Evolution Shaman because on the board he's still a 6 cost minion. So He can turn into friggin' like Baron whatever. He can turn into one of these, a grotesque Dragonhawk. We'll just skip ahead to because I did that. 5/5 for 7 beast with Wind Fury. This will kill people. I mean, you can get the thing is, you can get a 4/4 Wind Fury, sorry, a 4/6 Wind Fury for 6. That is a much better deal unless you have a really compelling reason to have a beast, because this thing is more fragile. So, I wasn't a huge fan of the Harpy. This guy seems less good than the Harpy, but well, he does do more damage if he's like left alone. And he's a beast, so you can do stuff. Anyway, back to Scaled Nightmare. You get 2/8 for 6. Your opponent has time to beat on it while it's weak. On your neck, because at the start of your turn, you double its attack, right? So, at the beginning of your next turn, it's going to have 4 attack. Then it's a 4/8 for 6, which is still not that exciting. I mean, it's a dragon. So it's got to survive to attack twice before it's really good. Now, the other thing it could do is you play this next to an alpha wolf or a flame tongue totem or something, and if neither of them die, then it will take that temporary bonus and double it, and then get the temporary bonus again. So at that point, it's big after one turn. But that's like contingent on having something else that is really good on its own that doesn't require him. So, yeah. Here's just a big Cthulhu minion. He's a 7/6 for 6, which is solid, and he gives Cthulhu +2/+2, so he's quite good. You want a big guy in your Cthulhu deck? You have him. Bog Creeper is actually a pretty good, like, boring neutral minion. 6/8 for 7 with Taunt. He does make War Golem 7/7 nothing for 7 look like a piece of crap, because when minions get this big, Taunt starts becoming a good ability that you do care about. When you throw down something with 8 hit points that does do damage, that is going to seriously harm your opponent's ability to attack you, or at least he should kill 2 things. Unless he gets dropped by one of your opponent's kill anything cards, in which case, well, if he's going to hit one of your guys, it might as well hit him. Hogger Doom of Elwyn, so mutant Hogger version. He's, 6/6 for 7, but he's a 6/6 for 7. Almost anything that kills him is also going to give you a 2/2 taunt. And then it's not too hard to see him being around and taking more damage and giving you more 2/2 taunts. And that can happen any number of times per turn. So you could do some crazy things. If you had Hogger out and then you cast that Spreading Madness, you could spread a lot of gnolls. Of course, some of them will probably be killed in the process, because I don't know when exactly it resolves all the random targeting, but he'd be very good in the arena. He'd be a pretty high pick if you get a row of legends in the arena. Twin Emperor Veclor. He is there only for Cthulhu. You're not playing him without Cthulhu. But if you have your Cthulhu and you've got Cthulhu up to at least 10 attack, which is by turn 7, if your Cthulhu's not at 10 attack, I don't know what's going on, then you get 2 4/6 taunts for 7 mana. 7 mana is still expensive, but 2 4/6 taunts that come out at once is pretty serious impediment to your opponent's attacking, especially when your deck is going to be control and slow. So he's a very good addition to a Cthulhu deck. Doomcaller, another Cthulhu guy. He's a 7/9 for 8, and he still gives Cthulhu +2/+2, in case he's not big enough turn 8. But also, if you've already played your Cthulhu, he will bring him back into your deck, not your hand. So your game's going super long if this ability ever matters, but he is kind of a backup Cthulhu. Kind of. Most likely you're just playing him turn 8 and getting bigger and stuff. That's probably not going to come up too often, that the game is still going after your Cthulhu has come out and died, but if you cast Cthulhu a second time, he doesn't reset. Everything gives Cthulhu bonuses that he only grows. So if he comes out the second time, your opponent better be dead, or something is incredibly weird going on. If you just want a vanilla minion for 8 mana, he's a 6/10, which is pretty okay stats. I don't know. Not really a great 8 mana play, but he's there. Gonna get picked sometimes in the arena. Just like in the arena, you might pick this guy who's a 6/7 for 8, which is not good. His ability only works when he attacks and kills a minion. So you have this minion you paid 8 mana for, and then you have to attack not your opponent in order to give him +2/+2, which will increase his attack and may or may not give him any health back. Probably he's losing health out of the deal if it was something that was even worth killing. And it only triggers. The problem with him is that it only triggers when he's attacking. Like, I think he would actually be better if he got +1/+1 whenever he kills a minion, including when opponent's minions attacked him. Even then, he still wouldn't be too good if it was +1/+1. He would probably be too good if it was +2/+2 when minions attack and kill him, because then only really large minions could ever take him down. Which would make him quite a boogie monster, but yeah. He's not very great. Blood of the Ancient One is just for silly people, mostly. You get a 9/9 for 9. At the end of your turn, if you somehow control 2 of these, they merge and get replaced with a 30/30 no ability minion. You have a 30/30. Congratulations. I mean, it won't get to attack until your next turn. You can do stuff like you play your Blood of the Ancient One, and then, if he doesn't die for some reason, you could play the other one, or more likely, you copy him with the original, the 5-cost Faceless guy. But, yeah, that's not a combo that anyone serious is going to be trying to go for. It's just not enough gain, too much effort. Sagoth the Slitherer. I don't know what to think of him, because you don't want to pay 9 mana for a 5/9. But remember, when a minion reaches a certain size, Taunt starts becoming a good ability. And he's just this weird case. Like, he is definitely not big enough to be worth the cost. You look at him, he's not big enough to be worth the cost. Except, he's really hard to get rid of. He is going to do 5 damage. He's going to slap everything that hits him for 5 damage, which not a lot of minions can go through 5 damage and come out okay. Maybe they'll survive, but even the ones that survive are going to be crippled like anything will kill them now, usually. It's going to take 2 big minions to get through him, or a crap ton of small minions, and being untargetable when you are that size and you are taunt, that combination of things, like, I can see why they wanted to make him expensive. I can't see why he would be overpowered at 8 mana. And that's kind of the problem you start running into. It's like, he's still really, really expensive. If he was 7 mana, this guy would be a death machine, I think. At 9, is it worth it? Because he's really hard to kill. You're just trying to buy time so that turn 10 you can play Cthulhu or one of the many other incredibly deadly, like, well, some deadlier than others, but one of the other strong 10 mana plays. In this very control-y set, there's so many cards in this set to help slow down the game and keep you alive until you can do crazy things. For 9 mana, he's going to keep you alive pretty well. Like, there's a good chance you're not going to die this turn. So, in that sense, I think he does his job. So, I don't know, he might be better than it seems. Is a weird synergy of abilities. Here, Deathwing Dragonlord. Deathwing has decided to become more playable than before. He's a 12/12 for 10 with no disadvantage now. He used to have advantages and disadvantages, but it was the kind of disadvantage where you didn't just put him in every deck. Well, now, if you just want a 12/12 for 10, you can put him in every deck. There's no harm. But also, when he dies, if for some reason you still have dragons in your hand, now this is a really late game thing. It's usually not going to come up, or certainly not going to be more than 1 or 2. And you could have cast them anyway, probably. But, when he dies, he could give you free dragons into play. And I have seen demonstrated that he does work with Duplicate, and it's stupid. If you have Duplicate out, then you play Deathwing, then he dies. You get 2 copies of Deathwing into your hand, and then it triggers as like, hey, there are 2 dragons in your hand! Suck it. So that's rough. He's a very solid 10 mana, here's a big guy minion. I mean, you can get much better powers than that in terms of winning the game most of the time, but sometimes you'll get free dragons, And he's still big and has no drawback. Faceless Behemoth is just a 10/10 for 7. He is a pretty pale comparison with Deathwing. But he's there. He might get taken in the arena sometimes. And then we have the Elder Gods. We already... Cthulhu's not showing up on here because he's not craftable. We've already seen Cthulhu anyway. But we have Enzoth the Corruptor. He's a whole 5/7 for 10, which is pretty shabby. But his ability is a battle cry. So at least he's going to do something right away. And what he's going to do is bring back as many of your dead Death Rattle minions as you can fit on the board. So 5 or 6, depending on whether you had a minion already. A lot of the good Death Rattle stuff has gone out. I don't know if there's going to be a Death Rattle-centric crazy deck, but there probably is, and he will he will fill your board with minions. If you were like a Death Rattle Hunter or something like that. I don't know if he's the thing that you were waiting for. Like, if I was a Hunter, I would just play the 8 mana, like, summon all my pets and win thing, but this is pretty rough. Thing is, Death Rattle minions don't tend to have battle cries, and so they're not going to, like, do crazy things. This guy does crazy things. Like, friggin' crazy things. I don't like playing against him, and I don't think I'd like playing with him, but I've seen that he seemed... Okay, 7/5 for 10. Terrible stats. I'd rather have the 5/7. At least it's not fragile. But he will cast a random spell for every spell that you have cast over the course of the entire game. Unfortunately, they're really random because the targets are chosen randomly. It works out. There are a lot of spells that you cast that just do something that don't have a target. If the spell doesn't have a target, it's almost certainly good, although sometimes it'll do nothing for you. But if it's a buff spell, he could buff himself, he could buff another friendly minion, he could buff an enemy minion. Same goes for damage. He could shoot you he could pyroblast you in the face, or he could, fire flame lance himself. But he could also just blast your opponent the way you want him to. There are a lot of spells that give you like healing or armor and stuff like that. You could drop a bunch of secrets. I've had him played against me a few times, and it has always worked out to be beneficial for the person who played him, in my very limited anecdotal experience. I don't know if that makes it worth doing. Like, he's definitely not my style, we know that. But he is stronger and not as suicidal as it looks. But you do want to have more than, like, 8 health when you cast him, because a lot of things can go wrong, and you need a little bit of a buffer. This guy is a serious, I cost 10 mana and I'm worth 10 mana. It's like, fair deal. He's a 10/10 for 10. At the end of your turn, he just takes a minion from your deck and puts him into play. Take a minion from the deck, put him into play. So, if your deck has an overall high sort of casting cost curve, he is going to get, like, first off, the amount of stats you're going to get for that 10 mana is a lot. Right? Even if you get a 3-cost minion, you're getting a lot of stuff for 10 mana. And if you happen to have more expensive things in your deck, he might give you more, and if he doesn't die right away, he will keep dropping big fat minions on the board until you win or die somehow. He's pretty solid there. And then, of course, we're back to Cthulhu, who, as we saw in the previous video, there are a lot of cards based on him. I've seen a lot of people try Cthulhu decks. I've done pretty well with the Priest one, and I didn't even have a lot of the cards at the time. So I think Cthulhu is a very solid strategy because he is a win condition, and the cards that support him are mostly pretty easy to put together and straightforward and decent. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in this set. I'm mostly playing like Cthulhu Priest and Evolution Shaman, but there are a lot of interesting cards. There are a lot of boring neutral cards that don't do much or anything interesting, but I'd be excited to see what the next set does and how it connects with some of these things. Maybe it'll find a purpose for the Dark Speaker. Who knows? We'll just have to wait for next time. If you enjoyed this, please click the like button, or on your touchscreen, please lick the like button. Warning, licking the touchscreen is not recommended. And check out Tales from My D&D Campaign on youtube.com/Demonac.